Hello guys, welcome to Wow Cats. I hope you all are doing well. And today's video is gonna be about the best ways of training a cat, solutions for when behavior becomes problematic. So let's get right into the video. The best ways of training a cat are 1. To make sure the training is done correctly. Point 2. To make sure you do not get bitten by the cat. Point 3. For the cats to see that they can avoid being bitten by you if they want to, so they will stop doing it on purpose. 4. To see that the cat is determined to do it because it wants you to make it stop, so it will stop doing it on purpose. 5. And finally, to see that the cat wants you to treat it like a dog and not like a cat, so it will stop doing what it does when you have told them off. Point 2. Training a cat to sit. This is a classic problem that we see with lots of people hiring new developers. They have a team and they are all interested in the same thing. So, their work gets divided up amongst them. And when one person does something interesting like getting a cat to sit for long enough to go outside, it gets shared. By now this has become pretty much standard practice, and we've seen lots of examples of it. It turns out that this isn't always a sign of good development though. It can just as easily be evidence that someone didn't take their own advice and learn how to do things the right way. This is an example of what we like to call collaborative learning. If you do things together, as opposed to simply doing them yourself, you can learn more about how things actually work. The same principle holds when you are training your cat, or your dog, or your kid. In order to teach them something new, you need to share that information with other people first, so that they know what you want them to do, and also so they don't get confused by what they should be doing. In fact, for many things there is no point in training someone unless you share the information with other people too. So why does this matter? Well, training is not just about knowing something yourself, it's also about sharing information quickly and efficiently. And if something happens which doesn't make sense from your perspective, then you don't know if it was intended or not. It's important that people understand how each other works so that errors don't happen, because then everyone would get on your case for not understanding every situation properly. Here are some tips for getting started with this sort of collaborative learning approach. 1. Communicate clearly and openly before starting anything new. Even though everyone will be working on their own stuff, it's still better if everyone understands why what they are making is the way they are doing it, rather than trying to add bits here and bits there hoping they won't clash later on. A lot of times I'll see someone working on code writing a piece of code which I thought was being written by another developer because they were using some different terminology, but were actually using the same code. This was probably confusing even to themselves too. Try not to overcomplicate things. We should all understand each other fully, but sometimes a bit more explanation isn't going to. 3. Training a cat to calm. As a developer, you probably know by now that not all cats like the same things. There are cats who love the outdoors and those who love to cuddle. There are those who prefer to be trained and those who prefer to be left alone. And there are those that don't like being walked at all and those that will happily run away if you don't follow them. So how do you train a cat? Many companies these days think that training a cat is just as important as training a dog. They think it's just one of the skills we need to learn, if not more so, for our software development careers, and it's something that builds on itself over time, just like with dogs. While this may be true for some developers, most people actually don't need to learn how to use a training collar or leash, as long as they can walk their dog around the block every day. Sure, there are some cases where it would make sense to teach your cat some tricks, but it doesn't have to be done specifically for people working in software engineering. The fact is, most cats can learn simple things. They just need some motivation and someone willing to help them do it each day. You probably won't be very good at teaching them skills like weaving into their daily routine, but that's okay, because all they need is someone willing to help them, which means you aren't obliged to spend any time on this part of the process anyway, though if you are really interested in doing so, feel free. As long as you have someone willing to take the time out of their schedule for your cat's training, then no worries. You can skip ahead through the rest of this post without having any idea what will be covered in this particular post, because I won't write anything about these things here in detail right away. I want you first to become familiar with some basic methods of training your cat anyway. Let's get started. As always, all these tips and tricks work equally well, even if they were not written specifically for programmers or developers. They will work equally well regardless of whether your target audience is programmers or not. Here is an example. 1. Choose an object and put it somewhere in plain sight. That object needs to be something that doesn't provide too much distraction in general. It doesn't have too much going on around it or distracts other objects from there. 4. Training a cat to stay. A common problem for cat owners is that their cats tend to wander away from the home, and there are few training methods out there that can help. Many people have written articles and essays about how to train cats, but many of these are grounded in anecdotal experiences or limited experimentation with a particular method. Here's a suggestion: take some time off work, go on holiday with your cat, and let him play. If he goes outside during this break, you've trained him. 5. Training a cat to stop scratching the furniture. Cat behavior is one of the most fascinating things about them. Obviously, you need to train your cat to stop scratching the furniture in order to make this work, but don't try to stop her from doing it in the first place. The following posts are an attempt at walking through some of these techniques and explaining them succinctly, which may come across as pedantic. But there may still be something here you haven't considered. So, there are a number of ways of training cats. Manual training, either through clicking on a specific spot on the cat's body or by employing a specific behavior that is rewarded, using a clicker. Aversive conditioning, by providing an unpleasant stimulus that is continuously repeated until the cat stops the behavior. This will only work if you have a way of measuring how long it takes before she stops. Skills training that use rewards and punishments, such as rewards for following your rules and punishments for breaking them. You probably see a few problems with each method. The manual method has issues with consistency, and consistency is one of the biggest problems for cats, so this method isn't very good at being consistent. It also doesn't allow for changes in environments too easily, because you need to teach your cat new rules on every change in environment, but it does allow for consistency across different environments. Inevitably, this means that if you have multiple cats, they will all learn from different methods. For example, if you have 2 playing cats and one has been trained using clicker training, then she will be able to follow your rules when she plays with another cat who hasn't been trained using clicker training, unless there are some other differences between her 2 playmates. So selecting one particular method and sticking with it can get quite complicated over time, because you can easily end up having multiple methods which each require different types of rules. This means that even though it is possible to train a cat using only manual methods, they are not particularly effective unless they are consistent across all environments. Aversive conditioning requires too much effort on your part to effectively train your cat, but it can be useful as long as you can provide an unpleasant stimulus regularly enough such that it becomes unnecessary for her to learn new behaviors, which is rarely achievable. For example, she might still need a bit of positive reinforcement when she plays when no rewards are. 6. Conclusion: cats are an amazing example of how learning takes place, as well as how we learn from them. Cats are also incredibly intelligent creatures and can be very resourceful. You can teach cats just about anything, with the exception of learning new tricks or new behaviors, which requires a different approach. However, what you can't teach your cat is stubbornness, because if it was a character trait that you could change, you would have to do so in the game. Cats are often referred to as stubborn because they tend to be stubborn when something gets in the way of what they want. This is often something they don't understand and will not let go of until it gets its way. They don't do things by themselves, they have to be invited into things by people. To illustrate this point, I would like to share a little story. I was training my cat and decided he should learn an interesting trick I had been doing for years: stacking toys on my bed. This is one of his favorite places. I got him started by placing one toy on top of another and told him that if he couldn't get up the stack in 2 tries, he would have to leave it there for 2 weeks. He did that for about 20 minutes before he broke down and left the first toy. All I had done was give him a challenge and let him know that it was not okay to ignore me when I do something like this with him. Anything less than this meant he must leave it there for 2 weeks or we were both going to leave it there forever. He was very happy with this challenge because he had been wanting to try doing this ever since we got home from work. 2 weeks later we went out on a date night, and after dinner we decided now is time for our first show-off trick. We took out my cat tree, he loves his tree, and put some toys up on top of it, trying not to make noise. We made sure no one else was around before we started playing with our cat together again, and then suddenly, without any warning at all, our cat dropped his toy down onto his head, exactly like I had taught him. He looked at me with one eye open, but quickly closed it again, obviously thinking I better not make too much noise or both of us lose our jobs. That's tomorrow after all. Thanks for watching this videos. Please subscribe to Wow Cat. Signing off.